I'm in my early 40s now, and the older I get, the more I realize that some stories don't have a clear beginning. They don't start with one single moment you can point to and say, "That's when everything went wrong." They start slowly, almost quietly, with this feeling that you want a different life, even though you have no idea what it might cost you. When I was 16, I didn't think of myself as a victim or a rebel. I was just a regular girl from a small town where everyone knew everyone, where your future felt like it had already been written for you, and where getting out felt almost impossible. My parents worked hard, but we were always short on money. We weren't poor, not exactly, but we lived on the edge all the time. Bills, debt, this constant sense that things might fall apart any minute, and that someday, somehow, it would all get better. I was a good student. I was the kind of kid people said would go far. And honestly, I believed it too. Not because I was arrogant, but because I wanted something more so badly. I wanted to see the world. I wanted out of that predictability. I wanted my life to matter. That's when the offer came, and it didn't feel dangerous. It didn't feel like a trap. It felt like a chance, a job, a trip, an island. People talked about it like it was temporary, like it was an experience, like I'd earn money and see a different world. No one pressured me. No one raised their voice. Everything was presented very carefully, almost beautifully. I didn't really talk it through with my parents the way I should have. I told them it was work. I told them it was safe. I told them there would be adults watching over us. They were worried, but they also saw it as an opportunity. I saw it as an escape, and the decision to go was mine. That part matters. I said yes quickly, not because I was stupid, but because I was desperate to leave. When you're 16 and someone opens a door labeled "a different life," you don't spend much time asking who's holding the key. The trip there feels like a strange dream now. The flight, the other girls, the tight smiles, the way we all tried to look older than we were. We didn't talk much. Everyone was lost in her own thoughts. I remember looking out the airplane window and thinking that I was doing something important, something that would change everything. The island was beautiful. That sounds cliché, but it's true. Sun, ocean, greenery, white sand. It looked like the kind of place designed to make you stop asking questions. But almost immediately, there was this feeling of isolation. Not fear yet, just this quiet sense that I wasn't in my normal world anymore. They took our phones right away. No explanations, no arguments. "That's how it works," they said, and that was enough. A lot of things were like that there. Necessary, but never explained. Time started to feel strange. Days blended together. I lost track of what day it was, what time it was, how long it had been since I last spoke to anyone back home. The hardest part wasn't even what was happening around me. It was how fast you get used to it. At first, you're tense, alert, always waiting for something to go wrong. And then one day, you stop waiting. You start living by rules that are never spoken out loud. Not because you agree with them, but because you don't know how else to survive. I saw adults there, powerful people, confident people. They spoke loudly, joked, talked about business, politics, money, the future. They acted like the world existed for them, and next to them, we stayed quiet. Not because we were told to be quiet, but because it became clear very quickly that questions weren't welcome. The money didn't show up as payment, and not right away. It appeared in strange ways. Bills back home getting paid, transfers I found out about later, help that no one asked for, but that came at exactly the right time. No one ever said out loud what it was for, but the connection was obvious. Silence had a price, and it wasn't being paid to me. It was being paid to my family. Coming home didn't bring relief. I was different, even though I didn't fully understand how yet. I tried to act normal, like nothing had happened. But your body doesn't lie. When I found out I was pregnant, it wasn't dramatic. There was no screaming, no crying. It was quiet. I sat in the bathroom, staring at one spot, trying to figure out how my life was supposed to go on. I couldn't say a name. I couldn't explain. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't even know where to begin. I told my parents I was pregnant. I didn't say who. I didn't say where. I said as little as possible. And it was enough to fill our house with fear. They didn't learn everything right away. Not from me. People came. Not with apologies or explanations, but with solutions. They spoke calmly, politely, like they were discussing a technical problem. They said the situation was complicated, but manageable, that everything could be handled, and that the most important thing was not to damage anyone's future. My parents were shocked, not just because something had happened to me, but because of the scale of what I was involved in. And very quickly, shock turned into fear. Fear for me, fear for themselves, fear for our family, fear of what would happen next. The money came again, this time more openly. Large amounts, enough to erase our debts, cover medical bills, pay off loans, all the things that had been hanging over us for years. No one ever said the word silence. There was no need. Everything was understood. The decision about the pregnancy wasn't really mine. On paper, I was asked. In reality, the answer had already been chosen. I was told it would be better this way, that I was young, that my life was just beginning, that this was the least harmful option. I looked at my parents and saw panic in their eyes. Not cruelty, not anger, just the fear of people who realized there was no real alternative being offered to them. I agreed, not because I wanted to, but because at that moment, I couldn't see any real way out. I was exhausted, broken, and completely alone. After that, our house fell into silence. No one talked about it. Not with me, not with each other. There were no memories, no photos, no questions. If I tried to bring it up, I was told, "It's in the past. Don't touch it." Life went on. I finished school. I left town. I studied. I worked. I built a life as if nothing had happened before. I learned how to function, how to smile, how to pretend everything was fine. But inside me, there was always this empty space that nothing could fill. Years later, when the names started coming out, when articles appeared and stories surfaced, I read the comments and kept seeing the same question over and over again. Why didn't they speak up? I knew the answer, because silence was bought. Not from me, from everyone. I don't hate my parents, but I can't say I've fully forgiven them either. There's a difference between they didn't know, and once they knew, they took the money. That doesn't make them monsters. It makes them people who were more afraid than they were able to protect me. I live with that knowledge now. I live with the thought that somewhere in the world, there is a child I know nothing about. And that is the hardest consequence of all. Not the fear, not the shame, but living with a question that will never have an answer. I'm not telling this story for shock, and I'm not telling it for sympathy. I'm telling it because silence doesn't work anymore. Because behind the nice words, the money, and the handled situations, there are broken lives. And if someone watching this video stops asking, "Why didn't you say something sooner?" and starts asking, "Why did the world allow this to happen?" then maybe saying it out loud was worth it. Because the scariest part isn't what happened to you. The scariest part is when everyone gets paid to stay quiet. After everything was officially taken care of, I spent a long time trying to understand what was wrong with me. From the outside, my life looked almost normal. I went to school. I talked to people. I did what was expected of me. But inside, it felt like I was living in a room without windows. There was air, technically, but it was never enough. I started avoiding mirrors, not because I didn't like how I looked, but because I didn't recognize myself. My face was the same, but inside, it felt like someone had rearranged everything, and nothing was where it belonged anymore. I couldn't explain it, but I felt it every single day. People around me acted like nothing had happened, and that was the hardest part. The world didn't stop. No one asked how I was coping. Everyone silently agreed that if we didn't talk about it, then it hadn't really happened. And I started doubting myself. I started wondering if maybe I was exaggerating. Maybe it really wasn't that bad, if everyone else had moved on. I had trouble sleeping, and when I did sleep, I woke up with anxiety that had no clear cause. Loud noises scared me. Sudden touches startled me. Even simple questions made me tense. I became hyper-aware of other people's moods, like I was always waiting to do something wrong again. I also became afraid of money. That sounds strange, but every bill, every purchase, every gesture of help made me uneasy. Because I knew money wasn't just money. It could be a condition, a silent agreement. A way of saying, this story doesn't belong to you anymore. Over time, I learned to live with it. Not because it got easier, but because people can get used to almost anything. I learned how to build a life without asking too many questions. I learned how to be normal. I learned not to look too closely at what hurt. But sometimes, when life slows down, when the house is quiet, and no one needs anything from me, it all comes back. Not as images or scenes, but as a feeling. A heaviness in my chest. A thought that appears out of nowhere and won't let go. Who would I be if I had said no? If I hadn't gone? If I hadn't agreed? If I hadn't stayed silent? I don't look for answers anymore. I know there aren't any. There's only the life that happened, and the shadow that walks alongside it.